So I like to DM my friend Borb. He's a bit of a celebrity at this point because he brings up really good points for this channel, and seeing as I want to take more comments from you guys and talk about them in videos, I feel like this is a good starting point because everyone will not stop talking about a Chainsaw Man theory that is so freaking hype that it would make, I think it would even make Asa Mitaka happy again. And hey, we should put that on a hat. Make Asa Mitaka happy again. Mama. Wait, no, this is perfect for the Asa Sibs. Okay, so first of all, as I said, this is Adoraborb's theory, but it does seem to be one of many that have come up with these, so I will give credit to Adoraborb. I want to spotlight these comments here as well. Some of these may be different at certain bits, but I tried to feature everyone who was generally in the same ballpark. So once again, thank you everyone for leaving your theories and stuff down in the comments. All right, so this theory really starts with the evolution of Fake Chainsaw Man, which we will be referring to from here on out as Fake Saw Man for short. So if you're not familiar, or maybe you just need a refresher, Fake Saw Man first appeared in chapter 111 of Chainsaw Man in November of 2022, if you can believe it. This chapter was actually the final appearance of Asa Mitaka's friend, Yuko, who had become monstrous and deformed and went to seek a cure from her relative who was also a devil hunter. She would never get to do that because, well, shortly thereafter, we see a figure looking to be that of Chainsaw Man's, holding up the dead body of Yuko. Now, this was pretty shocking at the time, and I remember lots of people speculating that it was Denji for various reasons, but quickly the Fake Saw Man theory really took hold as the primary explanation for what happened to Yuko. It actually wasn't until April of 2023, some months later, that we would get our first and second of only 3 total appearances of Fake Saw Man in chapter 128. This is notably in the now beloved Falling Devil arc during the arc's climax, as Denji is trying to save Asa from the Falling Devil and from her own negative thoughts, which only empowered Falling more and more. So just when things seemed grim and their journey would end in, well, literal hell, it was Fake Saw Man that would come to save the day in one of the most ominous and hyped up moments in part 2 as a whole so far. In a shocking turn of events, the Falling Devil is impaled from behind by Fake Saw Man, leaving Denji stunned. This new Chainsaw Man explained that the Falling Devil enforces a strict rule, obviously, which is customers must finish their food, and failure to comply means that the other devils in hell would relentlessly hunt Asa to satisfy this demand. So, he then advises Denji to evade the devil hunters until sunrise, suggesting that a fight would not go well considering their current situation. This moment obviously raised a lot of questions about Fake Saw Man's true motives, while escalating the danger for Asa in that arc, who seemingly became a primary target for Falling and all of the devils in hell. Now, fast forward to the Chainsaw Man Church arc, where once more Fake Saw Man makes an appearance. In a televised event, Haruka from the Chainsaw Man Church presents Fake Saw Man to the public, claiming he is the real Chainsaw Man to ultimately legitimize the church's influence. In the scene, Fake Saw Man introduces himself, sharing a fabricated backstory and motivations for fighting, which kind of infuriates Denji while he watches, because, I mean, duh, that guy's a phony, a big fat phony. Denji is enraged by this misappropriation of his own identity, achievements, and struggles, feeling that his true self is, in a way, being erased. Meanwhile, Asa Mitaka also watches the broadcast, but she quickly realizes that the Chainsaw Man on screen is not the same one who saved her from the Falling Devil, and this hints at a growing awareness of some of the deception surrounding Chainsaw Man's identity. It's really at this point that everyone figures out, okay, there's just another Chainsaw Man somewhere. And so, this brings us to the current day in the current arc, which we will call for fun, the Death Arc? In our first appearance since 2024, Fake Saw Man is back, but he is looking much more grotesque since we last saw him. So let's go ahead and just jump into what I am dubbing for in this community, I guess, like the Fake Saw Man theory. Listen, I can't be arsed to come up with a good name for this one. All I know is that I'm only making this video as an excuse to say Asa Mitaka because it's such a pleasant name to say.
Hit him! Help me!
Alright, so our theory begins with the evolution of Fake Sawman, namely, with his appearance and how this plays a role into his possible strength. Many have already noticed that his appearance is quite grotesque, with his meat hanging out everywhere and with a fleshy cape to boot, and needless to say, this guy looks amazing, and the amazing view is key to a core concept of this theory. Fake Sawman's appearance may be a direct result of the public perception of Chainsaw Man going into the gutter. Public perception has turned into, well, public fear because of the Chainsaw Man Church and the attacks by the chainsaw-infected humans. This has, in turn, acted as a way of amplifying the human fear of Chainsaw Man himself. So, the result of that is pretty basic. This fear created from the absolute collapse of society due in part to Chainsaw Man has given Fake Sawman a more monstrous appearance, but as well, possibly increasing his strength beyond that of Denji, Pochita, and Chainsaw Man. But this brings up a bit of a conflict. We often take Fake Sawman's identity for granted, which gets into the next part of this theory. Pochita essentially would be the Chainsaw Devil, which, as we know, is feared by other devils for his actions in Part 1 and before that. We also know that Denji's identity is essentially a hybrid as well, like Quan Chi, and he refers to himself as Chainsaw Man, which is distinct from Pochita's Black Chainsaw Man. We can tell this because every time we've seen Black Chainsaw Man, he is mostly exclusively being controlled by Pochita. And to simply put, this is how I view it. Pochita equals Chainsaw Man. Black Chainsaw Man equals Pochita's Chainsaw Devil form. Denji equals Chainsaw Man. Chainsaw Man equals Denji's hybrid powers and/or form. These clear distinctions are important to make clear because the fear of Chainsaw Man, which is Denji's persona, has grown stronger to the point that it is more feared than the Chainsaw Devil, which is Pochita. As you could probably guess, this has led to the birth of a new entity within the story of Chainsaw Man, the Chainsaw Man Devil, aka Fake Sawman. This adds a brilliant layer of meta to Chainsaw Man's story because Fake Sawman is not the Chainsaw Devil, but the Chainsaw Man Devil, born from humanity's fear of Chainsaw Man. In a sense, this is partly due to Denji himself with his decisions to call his form Chainsaw Man rather than Chainsaw Devil. So the reason this can work is because of the mechanics of Chainsaw Man, the series itself. The more something is feared, there is bound to be a devil born from that fear. So the implication here is that if Denji had referred to himself as the Chainsaw Devil, the fear would have strengthened Pochita and Denji, but instead Denji inadvertently birthed a new devil entirely, all because of a minor issue in how he worded his own form and the public's perception of what he is. I think this is by far the best part of the theory because of how it changes the entire dynamic of what we thought the devils worked like, or rather introducing an unseen mechanic and loophole within the system itself. This is the kind of detail that often gets ignored by some week-to-week readers. Makes sense, right? We're only reading week to week. But once I realized it, my respect for Fujimoto went up even more because of how Fujimoto was able to, in theory, abuse the concepts of his own concept to create something even more fascinating and even more interesting. In practice, Fujimoto created a very meta mechanic that really gets your mind going. Could someone, in theory, artificially create a devil by using the media, as an example, to create a new gun devil, or simply just any kind of devil concept? Maybe the Jesus devil, the devil devil, or even the sloppy blowjob devil. That's right, Kobeni, this is your time to shine, or should I say your time to, drink toilet water or something? I have no idea what a blowjob is. So, if this theory is one that turns out to be true, the significance really cannot be understated. Fake Sawman is a literal representation of Denji's internal struggle with his fabricated identity as Chainsaw Man. Remember when Denji turned away from being Chainsaw Man to do good by raising Nayuta properly? Well, while that may have been the right choice for Denji in that moment, His action actually unintentionally had an opposite reaction because by turning away from Chainsaw Man, it allowed the narrative of the fake Chainsaw Devils wreaking havoc to really go unanswered by the actual Chainsaw Man to correct those fears. So, Fake Saw Man embodies both Denji's self-perception and the public's twisted view of Chainsaw Man itself. So, Denji's identity issue in Part 2 and the widespread fear in Chainsaw Man's fall from grace has created an abomination, one that symbolizes something so sinister. Fake Saw Man's righteous demeanor almost one-to-one mirrors Denji's idealized version of Chainsaw Man, but much like the meta nature of the theory itself, that is overlaid onto Denji's character, as this is all a facade that is contrasting Denji's true self. To put it simply, Denji is torn between his true self, which is the dorky guy who can riz up a broom by being himself and get tons of boners sleeping with Yoru, and the guy who raised Nayuta. That's directly clashing with the persona of Chainsaw Man, which, thanks to the events of the Chainsaw Man Church arc, which many people actually poo-pooed on, has now spiraled into insanity. I think that it is clear that Fujimoto is setting up a clash between Denji and Fake Saw Man, and if you're a big fan of Persona, well, let's get the Persona OST playing in the background, shall we? Fujimoto is setting up Denji to confront his true self by confronting the embodiment of the persona of Chainsaw Man, which is symbolizing Denji's battle against his own fabricated identity, or alter ego. TLDR, Denji has to face himself and come to terms with his own identity, the responsibility of it, and how important his actions are and what they mean, and the ramifications of these actions. That's extremely important because at this point in the story, Denji feels like a permanently damaged person who essentially has given up hope for himself at this point, as evident by how he just lets Yoru use him right now. But if he has to face off against the embodiment of his own crises, then he should be able to understand his dilemma and then be able to move forward from there. And if we want Denji to be happy, well, what's more, he is going to have to go through even more pain and trauma to get to the point where he can be happy with himself again, whatever that even looks like. But while we don't know what that will look like, this theory does give us a clear view of the way the arc should, in theory, be headed. For example, we now know Denji's foil with the Fake Saw Man, aka the Chainsaw Man Devil, serving as the central antagonist representing his internal and external struggles. I think this should be one hell of an incredible arc, because on top of that, we now know who Asa's foil is too, which is Yoru. She is Asa's antagonist much in the same way as Denji and Fake Saw Man is. It's a direct mirror because Yoru symbolizes the loss of control over her life and identity. So Asa's growth will be all about, like Denji in a sense, confronting Yoru internally to reclaim the autonomy she thinks she just doesn't have anymore. On top of that, there could be a few twists to go along with this as well. Denji could actually end up fighting Yoru in this arc for one, or Asa Yoru could be the one to face Fake Saw Man. Because remember, Yoru's desire is to fight Chainsaw Man, which aligns with her potential confrontation with Fake Saw Man instead of Denji. This is yet another meta aspect of this arc, because if Yoru wants to defeat Chainsaw Man, well, she now has the chance to do just that, because the Chainsaw Man Devil really presents that opportunity to herself, and honestly, if we go back into the arcs, she's mostly reacting to the fake Chainsaw Man she's seeing on TV anyways. But I ask, would she be able to even fight him? The question of Fake Saw Man's power really is up in the air right now, but it could allow for some immense potential yet. In other words, we don't know his power level. So let's go over some of the key takeaways in case you need it all summarized. This theory sets the stage for this deeper exploration of Denji's character and some of the evolving dynamics between Chainsaw Man, the Chainsaw Man Devil, and the Chainsaw Devil. Fake Saw Man is clearly a manifestation of humanity's fear of Chainsaw Man, which is separate from Pochita and Denji. So will a battle against his own fabricated identity and facing the consequences of his own actions allow him to recover a bit of himself, to reclaim a bit of his mojo?
Mojo?
Mojo. The libido, the life force, the essence, the right stuff. What the French call a certain I don't know what.
One thing is for sure, part 2 so far has been really about exploring identity, self-perception, and perception of others, and that is beautifully set up through its characters and its foils, and this arc is no different. In fact, I think this arc may be one of the best arcs, or at least has the potential to be one of the best arcs. So, if you enjoyed this video, let's get to 250 likes and 5 new subscribers for the video. As well, you can join my Discord server, which unites my Don, Chainsaw Man, and Essay Analysis channel all into one community. If you want to go above and beyond to financially support what I do here, then throw me a bone at patreon.com/CTactics, or use my GamerSupps partner code to get 10% off all orders site-wide. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye-bye.